America is the greatest nation on earth. She got that way thanks to charitable leaders and citizens. We have heard the fringe right-wing Republican Party claim that the good works of liberals and Democrats is socialism. With God as our witness, we refute that lie. We call it philanthropy and charity. And I charitably introduce to you a few good men called by God to fuel the cause of America, to serve her interests, values of diversity and liberty. They are more than mere men. We elected them presidents. They are the best presidents that America has seen. If there is ever a question of how this country got so great, we owe the Democrat Party the credit. You have heard the lies, now hear the truth. Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th President of the United States of America. Cleveland won praise for his honesty, independence, integrity, and commitment to the principles of classical liberalism. As a reformer, he worked indefatigably against political corruption, patronage, and bossism. Cleveland was also favored and respected by conservatives thanks to his pro-business policies. Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of the United States, a leader of the progressive movement. He served as president of Princeton University from 1902 to 1910, and then as the governor of New Jersey from 1911 to 1913, with Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft dividing the Republican Party vote. Wilson was elected president as a Democrat in 1912. He is the only U.S. president to hold a Ph.D. degree, which he obtained from Johns Hopkins University. In his first term, Wilson persuaded a Democratic Congress to pass the Federal Reserve Act, Federal Trade Commission Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, the Federal Farm Loan Act, and America's first ever federal progressive income tax, and the Revenue Act of 1913. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States and a central figure in world events during the mid-20th century, leading the United States during a time of worldwide economic crisis and world war. The only American president elected to more than 2 terms, he forged a durable coalition that realigned American politics for decades. FDR defeated incumbent Republican Herbert Hoover in November 1932 at the depths of the Great Depression. FDR's combination of optimism and activism contributed to reviving the national spirit, working closely with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin in leading the Allies against Germany and Japan in World War II. He died just as victory was in sight. Starting in his first 100 days in office, which began March 4, 1933, Roosevelt launched major legislation and a profusion of executive orders that gave form to the New Deal. A complex interlocking set of programs designed to reduce relief, especially government jobs for the unemployed, recovery of the economy, and reform through regulation of Wall Street banks and transportation. The economy improved rapidly from 1933 to 1937, but then went into a deep recession. The bipartisan conservative coalition that formed in 1937 prevented his packing the Supreme Court or passing much new legislation. As World War II loomed after 1938, with the Japanese invasion of China and the aggressions of Nazi Germany, FDR gave strong diplomatic and financial support to China and Britain while remaining officially neutral. His goal was to make America the arsenal of democracy, which would supply munitions to the Allies. In March 1941, Roosevelt, with congressional approval, provided Lend-Lease aid to the countries fighting against Nazi Germany with Great Britain. He secured a near-unanimous declaration of war against Japan after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, calling it a date which will live in infamy. He supervised the mobilization of the U.S. economy to support the Allied war effort, which saw unemployment evaporate, and the industrial economy soared to heights no one ever expected. Roosevelt dominated the American political scene, not only during the 12 years of his presidency, but for decades afterward. He orchestrated the realignment of the voters that created the fifth party system. FDR's New Deal coalition united together labor unions, big city machines, white ethnics, African Americans, and rural white Southerners. Roosevelt is consistently related by scholars as one of the greatest U.S. presidents. Harry S. Truman.
There can be no peace in the world until the military power of Japan is destroyed, with the same completeness as was the power of the European dictator.
The 33rd President of the United States, 1945 to 1953. As President Franklin D. Roosevelt's third Vice President and the 34th Vice President of the United States, he succeeded to the presidency on April 12, 1945, when President Roosevelt died less than 3 months after beginning his historic fourth term. Truman used executive orders to begin desegregation of the military and create loyalty checks that dismissed thousands of communist supporters from office. Truman's presidency was also eventful in foreign affairs, with the end of World War II and his decision to use nuclear weapons against Japan, the founding of the United Nations, the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe, the Truman Doctrine to contain communism, the beginning of the Cold War, the Berlin Airlift, the creation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, Chinese Civil War, and the Korean War. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States. The first president born in the 20th century and the youngest elected to the office at the age of 43. Kennedy is the only Catholic and the first Irish American president, and is the only president to have won a Pulitzer Prize. Events during his presidency include the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the building of the Berlin Wall, the space race, the African American Civil Rights Movement, and the early stages of the Vietnam War. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963 in Dallas, Texas. Today, Kennedy continues to rank highly in public opinion ratings of former U.S. presidents. America, recall, in a moment of silence, that John F. Kennedy got us to the moon.
To stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
An accomplishment that no other U.S. president can claim. Lyndon B. Johnson, the 36th President of the United States from 1963 to 1969. Johnson succeeded to the presidency following the assassination of John F. Kennedy, completed Kennedy's term, and was elected president in his own right, winning by a large margin in the 1964 presidential election. Johnson was greatly supported by the Democratic Party, and as president, was responsible for designing the Great Society legislation that included laws that upheld civil rights, public broadcasting, Medicare, Medicaid, environmental protection, aid to education, and his war on poverty. Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. He was the recipient of the 2002 Nobel Peace Prize, the only U.S. president to have received the prize after leaving office. As president, Carter created 2 new cabinet-level departments, the Department of Energy and the Department of Education. He established a national energy policy that included conservation, price control, and a push for new technology. In foreign affairs, Carter pursued the Camp David Accords, the Panama Canal Treaties, the second round of strategic arms limitation talks, SALT II, and returned the Panama Canal Zone to Panama. Bill Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States, serving from 1993 to 2001. Clinton presided over the continuation of an economic expansion that would later become the longest period of peacetime economic expansion in American history. The Congressional Budget Office reported a budget surplus in 2000. The last year of Clinton's presidency, Clinton was re-elected and became the first member of the Democratic Party since Franklin D. Roosevelt to win a second full term as president. Barack Obama, the 44th and current President of the United States. He is the first African American to hold the office. Obama previously served as a United States Senator from Illinois from January 2005 until he resigned after his election to the presidency in November 2008. A native of Honolulu, Hawaii, Obama is a graduate of Columbia University and Harvard Law School, where he was the president of the Harvard Law Review. He was a community organizer in Chicago before earning his law degree. He worked as a civil rights attorney in Chicago and taught constitutional law at the University of Chicago Law School from 1992 to 2004. As president, Obama signed economic stimulus legislation in the form of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act in February 2009. Other domestic policy initiatives include the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, a major piece of health care reform legislation which he signed into law in March 2010, and the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, which forms part of his financial regulatory reform efforts, and he signed in July 2010. In foreign policy, Obama gradually withdrew combat troops from Iraq, increased troop levels in Afghanistan, and signed an arms control treaty with Russia. On October 9, 2009, Obama was named the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. While being led by these Democrat presidents, America matured, made progress, and achieved many things. America's Republican enemies have said throughout the years that America would become a socialist nation. They have said that liberty would end here, and most of all, they have obstructed America's rich heritage, culture, values, ideas, and her people. Without the Democratic Party and Democrat presidents, who will care? Who will care for them? Who will go outside of him or herself to answer a call much bigger than themselves? America, Democrat presidents contributed to the flame that we all ignited here in America. The flame that makes America stand out around the world. The flame that draws immigrants to this country. The flame that has fueled the best establishment of government since the Revolutionary War. America, our founding fathers had the courage to make the pledge that created our great nation. And now I pledge to you, don't let her flame burn out. Vote Democrat 2012.